Warning, this video contains spoilers both major and minor for the game Lobotomy Corporation. You have been warned.
Very hard to have position, and we hear an ultimate pop, don't we?
Bang is coming! Bang looking to come in, here comes your initiation, they're right through! Oh my gosh, your shockwave will find them all! And FKT, with a hell of a response, will take down 4!
Yeah, that's basically plot synopsis. Alright, so in a different universe, SK Telecom and Faker made it to Grand Finals of Worlds 2020. At the game's climax, Faker accessed 100% of his brain, granting him entry to the Akashic Records. There, he learned how to transform his League MMR into tangible energy. In a single breath, Faker internally coalesced this energy and transcended into the unkillable Demon King. Free from his mortal bonds, he burst through the roof of Pudong Soccer Stadium and peered across the vast expanse of his world. He found it displeasing. Like all deities, when slightly inconvenienced, he sounded the apocalypse and summoned 4 horsemen to his side. First, he sought war. Then, he sought famine.
Everyone, my name is Lily Pichu and I'm a VTuber.
And then pestilence.
We are banning any TFT players from our place.
And finally death.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Total Biscuit and welcome to the often...
With his riders assembled, great plagues and catastrophes devastated the world at large. Meanwhile, at a secret underground laboratory in South Korea, President Moon Jae-in, bearing witness to the destruction, activates the Faker Protocol. At the moment of Faker's transcendence, an impenetrable energy barrier, composed of salt collected from League solo queue, surrounded all of South Korea, abandoning the rest of the world to Faker's wrath. Back in the USA, the American dragon Jeff Bezos emerged from his hoard of wealth. With his resources, he anticipated the inevitability of Faker's apocalypse long before 2020 would come to pass. Using his vast wealth, he secured safe passage to South Korea to continue making his fortunes there. There, he would rebuild Amazon. For what is there left to do at the end of the world but profit off of others? Going back to South Korea, Faker and his horsemen can be seen looming ominously just outside of the country's border. Due to the barrier, they are unable to rain destruction upon the country. However, with their powers combined, Faker can extend his influence through space and time, allowing him to warp the country's inhabitants into horrifying abnormalities. Fortunately, where catastrophe is imminent, so too is the potential for profit. Here, Jeff Bezos would create a subsidiary of Amazon. This division would intercept and imprison the abnormalities sent forth by Faker, for a reasonable price, of course. Thus, Bezos would entrust a large sum of won to an anonymous figure named A. A would then create Lobotomy Corporation, a facility designed to contain and harvest abnormalities for energy that would power South Korea and its barrier. That, my friends, is where you come in. You are X. You are the newest in a long line of managers tasked with facilitating the day-to-day operations in Lobotomy Corp. Where your predecessors failed to keep others alive, you will undoubtedly succeed. Hopefully.
How many times have we fought?
Hard to say. It's the only memory I have of us since we were kids. Time to finish this, Virgil. Once and for all.
Riveting, isn't it? Okay, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's take it back a bit. So, first and foremost, Our primary objective is to harvest energy, or enkephalin, from abnormalities. At the start of most days, you are given the difficult task of picking out which abnormality you will add to your facility. Often, the only bits of information given to help influence your decision is ominous flavor text. Once you've picked your poison, the abnormality can now be seen idling menacingly in their containment cell on the management phase. This is the management phase. This is going to be the screen you'll be spending most of your time on. Here is where you'll harvest enkephalin from the abnormalities. So then, how do we go about harvesting enkephalin? A quick peek into the manager's manual reveals that we harvest enkephalin by seducing the abnormalities.
Seduce me.
The 4 dating strategies we can choose from are feeding, talking,
Right, so you don't even deserve to exist.
cuddling, and cuddling without consent. The better you are at wooing your targets, the more enkephalin the abnormalities generate. Well, you won't be in there, but your employees will be. Meet your agents. These are the sacrificial pawns with which you will lay a foundation of flesh and bone that will support all of South Korea for millennia to come. They are yours to command and will do anything you order them to do, ignoring any and all aspects of self-preservation. Before you send them to their untimely death, you are given an opportunity to bolster their success rate in the preparation phase. On this screen, you can hire, customize, and outfit employees in order to improve their chances at going out on a second date. As you get better at your job and the employees get better at theirs, you will be given an opportunity to expand and unlock more of your facility. This opens up more space for more employees, more abnormalities, and above all else, more profit. Once you settle into the role of manager, you will inevitably gain the attention of your coworkers, the various heads of the departments that make up the facility. If they determine you are somewhat competent, they will from time to time ask for your assistance. Go out of your way to help them and you will gain a powerful ally that'll make managing the facility all the more easier. Believe me, you're gonna need it. As the manager, you have an arsenal of tools at your disposal to assist in your endeavors, 2 of which are the facility itself and the other being your coworkers. Upon closer inspection, you'll notice that your facility is composed of several departments. Each department houses a set of employees and abnormalities for you to pair off. The facility is separated as such so that containing the ever-growing number of abnormalities is manageable. It may not look like it now, but by the end you're going to have a large saranghae gungjun to watch over. But thankfully you're not doing this on your own. We've met them before briefly, but say hello once again to your coworkers. Or rather, say hello to the Sephirot. They are the supervisors of each department and are there to assist you in managing the facility. Should some unforeseen consequence occur,
yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's gonna be the stream for today, guys.
or an abnormality slip from containment, they will be the first to inform you of your failure, often in various shades of passive-aggressive condescension. They aren't just there to berate you, however. Investing time and resources to their respective departments will grant bonuses and even abilities that make your life significantly easier. How these abilities manifest is dependent on which department you decide to focus on. Take Malkuth here, for example. Improving her department allows you to more easily coordinate the assignments of other departments' employees. This is because she's the head of the control team. Their job is centered around organizing and optimizing department functions and cross-department collaboration. Now for a more hands-on approach, Lobocorp has provided you 3 artifacts to manage the facility with: a mouse, a keyboard, and a monitor. With these artifacts, you can control time itself and manipulate the fate of your employees. On the surface, these are mechanics that you've probably utilized before, but the more keen and insightful players will discover just how powerful they are from the get-go. I want to tell you more, but it's such a huge story spoiler that I'd be doing you a disservice if I said it outright. All I'm gonna say is if you know, you know. Alright, you're familiar with your subordinates, your coworkers, and your workstation, but now we have to get into the volatile art of seducing an abnormality. As manager and matchmaker of the facility, your discerning gaze must determine which of your agents are a suitable match to the abnormalities you house. Recall that there are 4 pathways of seduction with which to garner favor: instinct, insight, attachment, and repression. Everyone has their kinks. Some abnormalities are incredibly open and agreeable to most avenues of romance. The rest, however, have a far more, nuanced and exotic palette. Unfortunately, you don't know anything about the abnormalities at the start, so often you'll need to perform a cold approach and infer which method of seduction will woo your target. Like in our reality, if you approach wrong, any number of bad things can happen. Death and insanity being the 2 most common consequences. Death is self-explanatory. Insanity often leads to death. Once you deduce which routine generates the most happiness, and by extension enkephalin, it is a simple matter of repeating the process over and over again until you meet your daily quota. Like with any skill in life, the more you do something, the better you get at it. As agents repeatedly practice their pickup game, they will develop the stat associated with that seduction technique. 4 techniques for 4 stats. Instinct develops fortitude, insight develops prudence, attachment develops temperance, and repression develops justice. Fortitude and prudence are straightforward. They correlate to an agent's health points and sanity points. The more you have of either, the harder it is for an agent to die or go insane when their advances are rejected. Temperance is directly related to an agent's work speed and success rate. A temperate employee is an efficient employee. They can get through abnormality work quicker and safer in comparison to their coworkers. Justice relates to an agent's physical capabilities. The higher their justice, the faster they can attack and the faster they can travel across the facility. Training these stats not only improves the physical capability of an employee, but it also indicates mastery over said dating strategy. Mastery over any of the techniques allows agents to safely interact with far more dangerous abnormalities who will become commonplace later on in the game. Not to worry though, seducing an abnormality is a cooperative effort. Your agents aren't going it alone because they have you. You understand the what and how on their side of things, but now you have to wrap your head around the specifics regarding your part in the process. It was mentioned briefly, but you need to uncover the course of action that incurs the least risk and generates the most enkephalin. For once, the manual we've been deferring to has no advice on the matter to guide you. I'm not even joking, it literally tells you it has no information. However, you've no other choice than to gird your loins and make do the best you can. Surviving an encounter with any abnormality can be a game of deduction.
Okay, what do spiders like? Spiders like to bond. Therefore, we send in them to attach.
Or an absolute crapshoot. If you can't infer the correct course of action, or you're just bad at guessing, then you're fucked. Sometimes literally. I hope you're a fast learner. It's only going to get harder from here because more abnormalities are going to be added with each passing day. At first, they're going to be relatively docile and easy to decipher, but before you know it, you will be assaulted by complex, temperamental, and hostile abnormalities. Now I know that sounds like an insurmountable task, but you'll notice that on your first day, there isn't really much to be afraid of. Hell, there isn't really much to, well, manage the facility. At most, you can tell your employees to go here or seduce there. This is intentional. The game is withholding information so it doesn't overwhelm you, but also because the game is out to get you. Case in point, it's your first day on the job. Things are going smoothly, the enkephalin is flowing, and your waifu is happy. But then all of a sudden, an alarm sounds. Now what could that be? And what does this ticking counter mean? And how do you pronounce this word? Congratulations! You're experiencing a Clyphot meltdown. You see, you can't go around seducing these eldritch horrors all willy-nilly without consequence. The residual sexual energy from harvesting enkephalin will permeate throughout the facility. When it reaches a critical point, as designated by this bar on your HUD, the facility will undergo a meltdown. Now when that happens, the abnormalities get that horny, and if you fail to calm them down, then a myriad of bad things can happen, ranging from inconvenient to catastrophic. And that's just one aspect of Clyphot meltdowns. The other side are ordeals. Sometimes this sexual energy will invite hostile abnormalities into your facility with the sole purpose of wreaking as much havoc as possible. As you progress through the game, meltdowns and ordeals intensify in complexity and lethality. Your ability to adapt and make the most of a bad situation is what's going to determine your success as a manager. Things don't get easier, but you and your facility get better. You have to. The game is inoculating you for what awaits ahead. But no matter how vigilant you are, no matter how good your employees are, things are destined to go wrong. That's kind of the appeal of the game. So when push comes to shove and the chips are down, you've got no choice but to get your hands dirty. Your employees, however, are going to be a little slow on the uptake. Remember that you're an energy company first and an abnormality prison second. Despite what others may tell you, fighting isn't something your employees are supposed to be good at. It doesn't help that South Korean Amazon employment standards are insultingly low. As long as you can follow orders and you have a pulse, then Lobocorp is more than happy to have you under their wing. Combat experience, along with intelligence and a desire to live, are not necessary to be eligible for enlistment.
Come in, maybe interact with some servers.
Do be aware that workplace altercations are common and conflict resolution is a daily occurrence. Do not worry, however. If confrontation is something that you're not quite comfortable with at the moment, there will be plenty of on-the-job training to develop your skill set. Given that this game was developed in South Korea, there is an implication that a level of mechanical competence is necessary when it comes to combat, right? Wrong. Combat boils down to selecting all of your units, ordering them to affix bayonets, and charge headfirst into any and everything that needs to be suppressed. Collateral damage be damned. There are some scenarios that may require some micro, but they are the exception, not the rule. 95% of conflicts in this game can be resolved with the aforementioned technique.
Buenos dias, fuckboy! Okay, something's happening.
100% depending on your own personal metric for acceptable losses.
The good news is with this is very winnable. Very winnable. Like, you don't even know how winnable this is. It's so winnable. Hold on. This isn't quite bad yet. Okay, that's bad. Now it's bad. Nope, still not bad. That's bad.
And that pretty much wraps up combat. It is an underdeveloped aspect caused by what I can only assume are limitations in game design or game direction. It's a shame because some of the combat scenarios in this game I do find narratively engaging. I just wish I could say the same about the mechanical crunch. Let's take Geburah for instance. Her entire arc revolves around this cycle of hatred that she can't let go of because of her failure to protect others. Delving into her backstory, we learn that she was personally hired by Lobocorp for her exceptional combat prowess. If the worst were to ever happen, she would be the line in the sand that would ensure the company's survival. But they were betrayed. She could withstand and repel any external threat, but they never imagined an attack would come from within. In her final moments, she stood against the enemy of Lobocorp. Deep wounds slashed across her flesh, her arm torn off in the chaos against the abnormalities, her leg dangling uselessly from her hip, unable to support her weight. In her final moments, she stood against the enemy of Lobocorp. In her final moments, she failed. And in the aftermath of her failure, all that could be salvaged was an entity fueled by hate but held intact by some fragment of good.
It's Guts. She's just Guts. Eye scar, missing arm, name starts with a G. Same eye, same arm even. Then you discover that you have to face her head on in combat, and everything that led to this moment is warning you that this is nothing like you've ever faced before. It will demand the best of you and those you lead. It will take every ounce of your wits and courage in order to overcome this Sisyphean task. The Red Mist has returned, and with her... Oh, no. I was promised combat. This is an early Newgrounds animation. Something is wrong here.
Combat is when you're going to witness the structure of the game peel away. If mixed bagged were a genre in video games, this would be a strong pick for essential entries. For everything I love about this game, and I do mean everything, there is a singular glaring flaw that detracts from its accomplishments. When it comes to audio, we've got some absolute bangers for music. The best of which play during combat. But on the other side of the wavelength, you get poorly mixed audio, which is most prevalent during, you guessed it, combat. When it comes to the core gameplay loop, I love uncovering the mystery and lore surrounding the abnormalities, which in turn clues me in on how to best interact with them. I don't love how the game devolves into a grind once you understand how every abnormality works in your facility. But then I absolutely adore how the grind is a key part of the narrative. It's a give and take, and this game takes more than it gives. While we're on this topic, I should also mention that the developer's handling of Unity is fine, until it's not. Early on, you're not going to notice any issues, but once the game starts getting crowded, it will start to chug along. It's not like I'm running this on a toaster either. I have an i7 with a 2070 Super. Upon researching the issue, there is a memory leak that occurs when the game is open for longer than 2 to 3 hours. This issue is then exacerbated at later days as your facility gets busy. At its worst, you'll get more frames from a PowerPoint presentation.
Jesus, my game is lagging so hard.
Despite the game's glaring issues, the foregrounding of the abnormalities and the interaction surrounding them emit so much intrigue and charm that I'm willing to overlook and forgive much of the game's faults. If you've clicked on this video, there is a good chance that you're familiar with the SCP Foundation. For those who aren't, the SCP Foundation is a web-based collaborative science fiction horror project. A community of writers create articles about dangerous entities that must be secured and contained to protect the public at large. Lobotomy Corporation's whole concept is derived from the idea of a facility managing dangerous specimens. This commonality is the whole reason why I was interested in Lobocorp to begin with. Oh, to be young again and spend nights doing nothing but reading SCP entry after SCP entry. Though there is a larger universe and lore in play for the SCP Foundation, the specimens themselves are the centerpiece of what makes it so entertaining to comb through. Lobotomy Corporation is the exact same way. But here, we don't have 1,000 entries to manage. We have roughly 50 abnormalities to choose from, and they run the gamut from docile to destructive. They come in all shapes and sizes, are derived from all sorts of cultures and backgrounds. Every abnormality may not have a reason to exist, but they all have a reason to persist. No two are alike, except when they are, but even then they're not. Do not feel sorry for them, do not feel pity for them, for at their core they desire your death. Discovering how to negotiate around their lethality and keep them pacified as best you can is the best part of the game. Some abnormalities are little more than a stat check. Some abnormalities are ticking time bombs waiting to go off. Some abnormalities are capricious puzzles that will wreak havoc on your facility until you figure out the exact manner in which to approach them. Best of all is how as you add abnormalities to your facility, a unique, let's call it narrative, to your facility will begin to form. Sometime around the 2nd to 3rd week, there will be the one abnormality, or abnormalities if you're unlucky, that will enforce a dynamic that you have to respond to. Let's take my first playthrough as an example. It didn't go very well. I ignored my Saphira's request, and as a result, my facility was barely functioning. To make matters worse, I was tasked with housing this particular abnormality. A big and might be bad abnormality. My chat informed me that this was a first day restart scenario. Stubborn fool that I am, and desperate for content and views, I pressed onward with reckless abandon, despite having no functionality, no good agents, and no notable equipment to speak of. This was not a good idea. The timing of the wolf's appearance was poor, to say the least. No one under my employment was capable of interacting with, let alone seducing, the abnormality. I couldn't just ignore him either. If I failed to respond to its meltdown, then it would break out and tear my facility to shreds. The abnormality was under our containment, but in truth, we were its prisoners. The playthrough's dynamic boiled down to me blitzing through each day before the wolf had an opportunity to break containment. But this wasn't a solution. I was making progress, sure, but the less time spent on each day meant I wasn't spending time on improving my agents or harvesting equipment. By pure chance, I was locked into a negative feedback loop where each passing day only made me weaker instead of stronger. That is, until the sudden appearance of this particular abnormality. A mercenary clad in red. The Little Red Riding Hooded Mercenary. I think you can see where this is going. Little Red is one of the few abnormalities that will assist you. Being a battle-hardened soldier, she is willing to suppress rampaging abnormalities within the facility, as long as the pay is adequate. She is a mercenary, after all. That doesn't mean she is on your side. She is as powerful as the wolf, and she is as willing to set her sights on your facility as she is on the other abnormalities. And just because she's willing to help doesn't exclude her from meltdowns. Now, I had 2 abnormalities under my charge that I could not interact with. Where I originally thought I was saved, I was instead thrown deeper into this vicious cycle. However, as all stories go with a clashing red and blue rhetoric, the fate of these 2 abnormalities are intimately intertwined. So much so that it is recommended to keep them as far from each other as possible lest either go into a blind rage and wreak havoc on the facility. But then it hit me. The only thing they hate more than me is each other. I can't stop them from going on a rampage, but I can direct them to a more appealing target. I would take their strength and turn it onto each other. Every day was marked with a fierce battle between the 2, and my ragtag group of agents would be there to pick off the winner. Some days went better than others, but we finally had an answer for both abnormalities. This pivotal moment when you outsmart the game is the most satisfying part to Lobotomy Corporation. It is inevitable that you will be forced to house an abnormality beyond your capacity, but given some time and ingenuity, you will find a way to wrest control back from the abnormalities. Where you were once scrambling together an ill-equipped response to a containment breach, you now have kill squads ambushing escaping abnormalities. Where your heart sank at the realization that you now house an Aleph, you now actively imprison them to harvest powerful equipment. Where you were forced to retry a day because multiple abnormalities had broken containment, you now purposely engineered death matches between them for your benefit and amusement. When you know the abnormalities in this way, now you're no longer experimenting. Now you're exploiting. Solution in hand, I gave up on the playthrough. Why? Because it was combat heavy, and you already know how I feel about that. Also because I had the express train to hell, and that was not at all a pleasant experience. As you study the abnormalities to help build your plan of attack, you'll notice that some employees can begin to develop affinities for certain specimens. Though they are monsters, the abnormalities aren't void of personality or even history. They are a part of this world and contribute to it as much as your agents do. Their unique charm is evident in all that they do, whether it's idling in containment or disemboweling your employees. Let's take this abnormality for example. Specimen 00530, otherwise known as the Singing Machine. A large rectangular industrial meat grinder that grinds any object that is thrown inside. When activated, the abnormality will begin to produce a continuous melody that can be heard throughout the facility. While we're on the topic of grinding things, I want to bring special attention to what I feel is the second biggest flaw in Lobotomy Corporation. The grind. Oh man, the grind. Optimal play in this game is to grind. I didn't grind in my first playthrough and we already know how that panned out.
If you aren't taking advantage of each and every day to maximize every possible metric that you can, then you will fail to reach the final day. A bad series of abnormalities is all it takes for things to start going horribly wrong despite your best efforts. Therefore, in order to combat the effects of RNG, you need to grind every ounce of value you can every day. With a lot of patience, you can create a task force that can deal with any and every scenario given proper direction. Once you have that, then you can slowly but surely develop every agent under your employ until everyone in your facility is equally powerful. This method of play appears optional. Well, it isn't. And yes, I am aware that you can use Lob to buff your employees. But even with the amount I've accrued, there is no feasible way I can station every department to capacity with maxed out employees on Lob alone. You have to grind, because any employee that doesn't meet this standard by endgame is a liability. They are a hindrance at best and a detriment at worst. That doesn't mean they're completely useless. They're good for some things. So if grinding is a key part of the game, the question is, how well is it incorporated into Lobocorp? It's serviceable? There is a lot to unpack here, so bear with me, because we have to start at the foundation. Literally. I'm talking about the construction of the facility here. In an ideal world, your facility would be set up in a way so that the easier abnormalities would be contained in the upper layer. Then, as you descend to the depths of the facility, the abnormalities become more and more dangerous the deeper you go. The idea here is that the competency of your agents would run parallel to the threat level of the abnormalities encountered. New employees are stationed at the upper layer and are transferred deeper and deeper into the facility as they become stronger. It's tried and true game design, it's intuitive, it's proportional, and hell, it's even lore appropriate because it's referenced in the story. Sounds good, right? Well, this holds true for about 5 days? After that, it's a free-for-all. You could have Aleph here, Wow's there, Teth's here, you get the idea. So what does this have to do with grinding? When training your employees, you obviously have to ensure that they survive their training. Given the inconsistency to the placement of abnormalities, ideal parents could be separated across whole layers. But the distance isn't the problem. It's the menu setup that is the real offender here. The work menu automatically opens up to the employees stationed in that department. So then you have to scroll through several menus to find the right employee to train. This doesn't sound too bad until you realize that there is no convenient way to keep track of who did what work and how many times they did it. These two almost innocuous issues, when combined, compounds how frustrating and exhausting the grind can be in Lobocorp. The grind is the culprit for sure, but the UI a co-conspirator. The uncertainty in abnormality placement coupled with the rudimentary UI makes it so that the safest way to train an employee is to do it one at a time. Sure, you can multitask and train multiple employees at a time with varying degrees of success, but you can't forget that you're still playing the game. You're not just training your employees. You're dancing around containment breaches, dealing with meltdowns, suppressing ordeals, honoring requests. God forbid, in the chaos of everything, the agent you've been spending all this time on ups and fucking dies on you. Because now you've got to retry the day and start all over again. I have this many hours in the game, and most of it was spent retrying a day because I lost focus for 1 second while grinding out a stat or an item. This feels bad. But it's not unfair. The abnormalities are dangerous entities. It only makes sense that the more time spent with them equates to more incurred risk. So what's going on here? If you couldn't already tell from the previous outburst, grinding in Lobocorp isn't fun. It's not even something I would call palatable. It's clunky and exhausting. But what's frustrating is that it is so close from being, if not enjoyable, then at least tolerable. Okay, so it's clear that grinding out every second possible of every day is the intended way to play. The fact that Saphira bonuses carry over from playthrough to playthrough is evidence of that. In that case, it would be nice if I could see a progress bar for each stat so I can better plan out a workday and stop wasting time grinding when I don't need to. Inversely, it's also nice to see how much more time I need to spend on that particular agent if needed. I cannot count how many times I was certain that I grinded out an agent stat to max only to find out I barely improved it. We touched on the UI's shortcomings briefly, but now let's really get into it. The agent management mechanics could be expanded on. You already know my issue with the work menu. My suggestion to streamline the process would look like this. Clicking on a work for an abnormality would open a menu to the departments you have unlocked. Then clicking on the department would open a menu to the employees currently stationed there. The other option is to manually zoom in and select an agent before giving them a directive. It's fine at first, but once your facility gets populated, it turns into a hassle. And it goes from hassle to hell when you're trying to micro an employee during combat. Also, control groups? No, we're just not going to add those in? I feel like control groups would fit perfectly in this game, but they are suspiciously absent, and I'm not the only one who's noticed. There are so many scenarios where control groups would have been a perfect tool to utilize, but no such thing exists naturally within the game. You can mitigate some of these issues with some jerry-rigging. You can be mindful of where you assign an employee to reduce downtime. You could have a document open to keep track of who's been doing what. I personally like to park an agent right outside a containment unit to accomplish both. These techniques help quite a bit, and they're easy enough to incorporate into your workflow, but I feel like I shouldn't have to resort to doing things like this to compensate for a lacking UI. This sounds like nitpicking, and I admit that I am doing it a little bit, but you have to remember that optimally speaking, you're spending anywhere from 1 to 2 hours on average for each day, sometimes even longer. This is counting times you've failed and had to retry a day though. The thing is, if I'm expected to spend that amount of time doing the same thing over and over and over again, then the experience should be as streamlined and as user-friendly as possible. I know that there are mods out there that do what I'm asking, but I feel like these are things that should have been implemented in the base game. Mods aside, base game grind is exhausting. It's so exhausting it starts to feel like an actual job after a while. You'd think that this exhaustion, coupled with the combat, would be more than enough for me to drop this game, and you'd be right. But this exhaustion, this fatigue is forgivable because it's baked into the narrative, and I love that. I genuinely love it when game mechanics and game feel are incorporated into the narrative. I'm also easily impressed, but shut up though. This one aspect is enough for me to forgive the grind. Not wholeheartedly, mind you. I forgive it enough for me to play through the game, but not enough for me to not complain about it. I'm not going to delve too deep into the story. This game is part visual novel, so to tell you everything that's going on would rob you of that pleasure. I'll give you some plot points, however. You're X. You're the brand new manager for Lobotomy Corporation. What happened to A through W? Who knows, but I'm sure you can figure it out for yourself. This is Angela. She's your AI supervisor posing as your AI assistant to ensure you're doing your job. If you've ever worked in an office before, then whether you like it or not, you'll feel right at home. Days go by, you get better at your job, you get familiar with how things operate, and you get an idea of where you fit in the corporation. For the most part, your co-workers are cordial, for the most part, and everyone tends to stay in their lane. You learn who to talk to, who you shouldn't talk to, and who you shouldn't have been talking to. Some odd weeks go by and the monotony is starting to get to you. You keep doing the same old thing over and over again, and maybe you weren't as attentive as you were at the start. Things slip by your notice and things go wrong, but you chug along and grit through it. You get acclimated to your job, so they start piling on more things for you to do without increasing your pay. You start opening up to your coworkers more just to help break the routine. You talk to the office gossip and you start learning more and more about how things really are at your day job, but you're so deep into the cycle to really do anything about it or care. You start learning more than you'd like to know about the corporation, the abnormalities, and your code. And especially here, there is plenty you shouldn't ask about. You're so deep into the cycle that things begin to blur together. You keep trudging through the days, but you feel like you're stuck right where you're at.
You know you're moving
forward, but your feet are held firmly in place where you are.
Why would you two people you trust are now need more than ever?
There's a box you're told to open, but you can't even reach it to begin with.
There is always a door that I am barred from. A pitiful gaze its gatekeeper. Yet behind that sad visage I am almost warmed by faint embers of expectation. A conviction to see me prevail, a glimmer of hope that someday I will understand. 24 times I have tried, and 24 times I have failed. I can't keep going like this. I can't even see the door anymore. I can't keep doing this. I'm going mad.
If I've given the impression at all that I don't like this game, I want to be clear. I love this game. I really do. Am I going to play it ever again? Probably not, no. But that doesn't stop it from being one of the more unique experiences I've had with a video game. I concede that when taken piecemeal and its parts considered in a vacuum, there is a lot going against this game. But when it all comes together, it becomes a charming experience that sucks you into its world. Playing this game was an emotional roller coaster that I truly enjoyed and appreciate having experienced. With that said, I don't know if I can confidently recommend this to every person I meet. I would suggest picking this game up when it's on sale. Unfortunately, unlike other content creators I aspire towards, I lack the clout to put things on sale with every video release. Maybe one day. Anyway, there's a sequel in the works and you can expect a video on that, but it's still in early access and I'm waiting until it's out completely before committing to any sort of playthrough or video. I might do an early preview of sorts, but for now I think I'll do something a little less labor intensive. Other than that, thank you for watching. I sincerely hope you've all enjoyed the video and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
No, you're gonna dig this.
Sure.